My name is Liddy Paulson, and I want to welcome you all to Gianne's art exhibit. And I want to thank you all for coming out. The rain cooperated, and I'm really glad, and what a wonderful attendance we have here tonight, and thank you for being here. My name is Liddy Paulson, and I'm president of Newport Beach Sister City, and we were able to have this lovely reception tonight thanks to the Newport Beach Arts Commission and a grant that we received from them. It's my opportunity here to introduce our guest of honor. Gianne is an international artist who has painted in public gardens in Europe, Japan, Mexico, and the UK and the United States. She is a contemporary nature painter and has exhibited widely, I almost said wildly, widely, probably some of both, with work seen in collections in prestigious gardens as well as city collections. Gianne received her Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from UC Irvine in the 1970s, and this was during the defining years of the minimalist movement under masters such as Judy Chicago and Tony DeLab. We've enjoyed getting to know Gianne during our pre-reception events, and I know you will find her to be an informed and engaging speaker. So without further ado, I introduce Gianne.
All right. First of all, thank you so much for unexpected, wonderful attendance. I see so many friends out there, family, collectors. It's really moving. Art professionals as well. There's quite a few out there. Thank you for coming. I'm honored and so thrilled. And of course, special thanks to Tim, of Library Services, who allowed us to use this wonderful venue. Connie and Susan, who were fabulous in the organizational aspect of this, and especially the Newport Arts Commission, who provided this beautiful reception today. And a special thanks to my sister and agent, Donna, who provided a lot of moral support for me throughout this long process. So the Sister Cities of Newport Beach, they have a wonderful program where they send students over to their cities in Japan, in France, and in Mexico, and vice versa. Those students come here. And these are all social and cultural exchanges. So I had a different idea, and when I proposed to the Sister Cities in 2017, I wanted to do a visual exchange, which meant that I would travel to those places, paint in those places, and bring those images back to you, the Newport Beach public, so that you could see what their beautiful places are, so that we could appreciate the diversity of those cultures right here in our own backyard. And the Newport Arts Commission totally supported this. They elected me to be one of the exhibitors here in the library, which is a rare thing. It's difficult to get. With that in mind, that I would be showing paintings that I had done in these sister cities so that the public in general could enjoy these beautiful images. So it's about the aesthetics of the garden. So I'm an international artist, as Libby said. That means that I paint in residency around the world. What I do is residency involves going to these public gardens. I only paint in public gardens, and I exhibit only in public spaces. So that means this library is a perfect venue for me, because the idea of getting the artwork out of the gallery and into the public arena is what I'm trying to do in my artwork. Which means, instead of the people going to the galleries, which they're going less and less, as we all know, I want people to go into a space, a public space, and see something that they can identify with, that they can enjoy, that they can access intellectually, visually, and really come away with it saying, wow, that's really beautiful. So where have I done this? Okay, in France, I've painted on the French Riviera in the city of Menton, which is right on the edge of France, on the Mediterranean, and then the Domaine de Réole, which is on the Var coast, close to Saint-Tropez. That was my longest residency. I was there for 5 months. let's see, I had the great privilege of painting in the garden that Mary Cassatt, the famous American Impressionist, she lived in this beautiful villa outside of Paris, and that is where in 1898 she painted the series of paintings that were shown in Chicago at the special grand exhibit there, the World Exhibit. Those paintings are now lost, but her garden is still there, and I painted there. And my most recent residency, of course, was in the Bagatelle Garden in the city of Paris. I was the first artist ever invited to paint in residency there. That was last spring, and that was by far the most difficult residency I ever did. Italy, I've painted in Hambury Garden in Liguria, which is right on the other side of the border from France, down on the island of Ischia, which is right next to Naples, right across the bay from Naples, next to Capri. La Mortella is the name of that garden. I highly recommend it. And the secret garden, which is called Nympha. Nympha Garden is outside of Rome. It's open one afternoon per month. If you can get there, you will not be disappointed. It's such a rare and beautiful, beautiful place. Then in the UK, I painted in Cornwall on the island of Tresco, on the Scilly Islands. In Mexico, of course, Cabo San Lucas, San Jose del Cabo. And America, yes, Laguna Beach, Hortense Miller Garden, and Casa Romantica San Clemente Cultural Center. So what am I trying to do with this moving around the world and you know, painting in all these exotic, wonderful places and bringing those images to the great public? As a contemporary artist, I feel it's absolutely essential that we must change the way that people look at things, and change the way that people look at things that they look at every day. So that is my main goal. So I'm looking at landscape in a completely new way, I hope, trying to push the limits of traditional landscape to a further limit. So what that means is traditional landscape, as we were at the Irvine Museum discussing this with a few guests and Hiroko yesterday, is there's always a foreground with a strong subject, a midground with a body of water usually, and then sky. Okay, that's your traditional plein air landscape. You will see in the paintings that I am doing something completely different. I'm pushing the laws of perspective, working very close up, distorting the composition, working all over the paintings, all over the canvas. There's no central subject, with the exception of this one right here. So yes, so that's what I'm doing. Now I'll be speaking just for about 20 more minutes, and then I'm going to open up to question and answers. My favorite time of the speech, so please think of what you want to say. So this is one of my favorite phrases, quotes about a garden. Si hortum in bibliotheca habes, derit nihil. This is Cicero, 2,000 years ago. He said, if one has a library and a garden, one needs nothing else. Now this is so true, isn't it? Because a garden is a place of great harmony and serenity. Whenever you walk into a garden, you have that wonderful feeling of just being where you're supposed to be, right? And we all want to get back to the garden. The garden, for us in the Western world, denotes innocence, the time of innocence, the great beginnings. And so this quote for me really embodies what the garden is to me. And as I was saying, what I'm trying to do is make it so that you see the garden in a new way. Because in our world today, as Georgia O'Keeffe so rightly says, she says, no one sees a flower really. It's so small, it takes time. We haven't the time, and to see takes time. That's the key. Because I can tell you, when I'm standing in front of a plant, a situation, a scene that I'm painting outdoors, because I'm painting outdoors, I'm standing there for 4 hours. And I can tell you that I can really see that by the end of the day. I've seen the evolution, I've seen the elements run through that subject, the wind, the light, everything is changing. And today, in our life today, everything's moving so fast, and we're all living, looking at a device. Okay, so when you think about it, our field of vision is a half of a sphere. That's 180 degrees round, half of a sphere. And we're looking at a device that's about 2 by 2 inches. Okay, so we're missing so much. So this is another part of the artist, contemporary artist role today, is to bring your attention back to what's going on around us. And to stop that high stimulation and have us pause and look. Okay, so I'll begin with Newport Beach because we're all right here in Newport Beach. So the paintings that I'll talk about here, I'll talk a little bit about my technique and not very much. But so this is a perfect example. Painting was inspired by a site that I'd seen at Sherman Gardens on a very hot day. And it's a wonderful example of my technique of negative space and rearranging nature. So on a painting such as this, I start with the negative space, which is all of the area around the subject, right? So these dark areas, this is negative space, here and here. And as I'm going along, I may paint this in first, the red down in there, and then afterward I'll paint in the rock. So everything is done in reverse. That's negative space. And also, as I'm going along, I'm rearranging nature. If there's something in the composition I don't like, it doesn't matter. I'm the painter. I can do anything I want. I change it. I change the color. I change anything I want. I add something. I take it away. That's the great joy, right? So at the same day at Sherman Gardens, I was there, and I went into the tropical garden, and I don't paint fish in general. I mean, and I took this picture because the reflection of the blue light on the pond was just so brilliant. And so I took this picture on my iPhone, and I made a quick sketch, and I went back to my studio that day. And the woman I was renting my temporary studio from announced to me I had to move everything out of my studio by tomorrow. And I said, what? You know, I was furious. So I went upstairs and I painted this painting. Now this painting is painted so rapidly, it's outside and you can see the paint dripping in it. I'm so mad. But the overall impression does have some harmony and serenity, but the energy is definitely there. So this is what you get when you get mad. So Rogers Gardens, I'm from here, I'm from Southern California, and I grew up with Rogers Gardens. Everyone in this room probably has been there. And so I had taken, once again, an iPhone picture, and here it is. And I was in Desenzano on the Lake Garda last fall, and it was a horrible day, drizzly, humid, mosquitoes. It was just the worst. And I'm looking through my iPhone. I said, oh, those colors are amazing. So I looked at the photo, and thankfully I have a very strong visual memory. I put the iPhone down, and I painted this painting. Now, the point of departure on this painting is only color. It's not the form. You can see that the forms are not correct, right? They're not copying. I'm not copying anything. I'm interpreting. And I had just seen a Nicolas de Stael exhibition in Provence, and he did some wonderful things with verticals, and that's what I'm working on. Oh, I'm sorry. That's what I'm working on here in the background. This is directly influenced by Nicolas de Stael. And I love this quote by Claude Monet. I must have flowers always and always. Il me faut les fleurs toujours et toujours. That's so beautiful. Me too. Because why? As a landscape painter, the colors are normally quite neutral. You get ochre color sand and rocks and hills, and you have blue sky. So it's really in those blues and ochre tones. Well, I have to have color because I'm a colorist. That's what I love the most. I mix all my own colors. No color on my canvas ever comes straight out of the tube. Everything is a mixed color. So that quote for me is everything. Now, in this painting, you have a really nice example of the close perspective, flattened from near to far. So what that means is I'm looking at my iPhone and putting it down. Of course, this painting is 4.5 feet by 4.5 feet, which is why it's not here. I couldn't bring it from Europe. It's too big. But it was influenced, of course, by Rogers Gardens, so it is Newport Beach. But what I'm doing here is I'm pushing the limits of landscape and the limits of perspective because I'm moving everything from the far all the way up to close. So I'm moving from 3-dimension into 2-dimension. Now, you'll notice this part on the right, I left it blank, which I'm allowed to do, because the painting was just so dense. It was just getting so dense and overwhelming, and I just left it. Condensing the image by working up close. Yes, this is a very banal spot on PCH. I can't even tell you where it is. You know, these aeoniums and kind of a funky bird of paradise. And I used that as the point of departure for this painting. And in this painting, you see quite clearly the negative space at the top and the triangular composition with all these triangular forms and this kind of fanning out. I use that to move your eye from the almost center toward the exterior and coming in with some nice orange of the beautiful bird of paradise, one of my favorite flowers. So I went down to Cabo San Lucas. This was last February, and I was only there for 10 days, so I decided to work on pastel. These pastels are upstairs, by the way, if you'd like to see them. And I was hosted by my wonderful friend Ona Ash, who does a lot of things in philanthropy for Mexican women, and she's a wonderful woman. When I wasn't working on the pastel, I gave her a couple of pastel lessons, and here's Ona with one of her first ones. She did a good job. So she took me out to this amazing cactus forest. These cacti are unique to the Cabo Peninsula. They're called elephant cactus. They can be 300 years old and 80 feet tall. Yeah, I mean, they're just amazing. And the problem becomes which one to paint, because there's so many of them, you know, and they're very, very sculptural. So I painted this pastel using a very strong upward motion to give us a feeling of the height and the density of it. I also did 2 oil paintings in another year of this same cactus because I'm so fascinated by the form, and you would know this plant because it's outstanding plant. I highly recommend the Cabo Desert to see the forest of cactus. So this is a very ordinary plant in Mexico. In the wintertime, it turns from that kind of olive green to that wonderful fuchsia pink, which is seen in a lot of Mexican folkloric art. And in the pastel, I wanted to show all of the stages of the evolution. So we have it in spring, summer, winter, and fall. It's all together in one. Bird of paradise. The earth laughs with flowers. This is so true. And I think the funniest flower is the bird of paradise, really. So, and it's a great subject for a painter because it's sculptural, it's stiff, it has large forms, colors are amazing. Because those leaves aren't green, those are blue. I hope you all see that. That's all blue, right? So you know, the bird of paradise, we have them all over California and they're all over Mexico. It's the gardener's friend, right? When you don't know what to put in, you put in a bird of paradise, right? No maintenance whatsoever. You just plant it. You don't even have to put anything on the rock bed. It just grows. And so there were many to choose from. I didn't choose any. I just painted it as I felt it should be painted. So Antibes. I was invited to paint in Antibes, the Newport sister cities. They sent a letter, and so I was greeted by the city officials there. Antibes, as you know, is right next to Nice on the Côte d'Azur, on the Mediterranean in France. Beautiful place. In that bay right there are some of the most amazing yachts on the Mediterranean. They're all right there. Okay, and it's gorgeous weather, the same weather that we have right here in Southern California. So I applied for the residence in this Villa Fontaine, which is this fisherman's cottage on the left, and that's the view of my living room. Any international artist can apply for residency there. I was there for 2.5 months. It's a little rough around the edges. Madame Fontaine gave that to the city in 1960, and nothing has ever been done since then. So I don't recommend the bathroom and the kitchen. I mean, so I got there, and I realized that I wouldn't be able to go out with my easel and my large canvases because the stairs were so narrow and stony and high that it was positively dangerous to go down and up those stairs with all my stuff, my kit. So I found out about this place, the Ellen Rock Villa on the Cap d'Antibes, famous for the rose garden, as you can see, and that's the villa. All right, so I started calling and sending emails to the director, Isabel Pasquini. No response. 2 weeks go by, and I'm asking people at the mayor's office, well, what's happening? You know, I've got to get cracking. I've got to get working. You know, I've got work to do. And they said, we don't know. You know, she's thinking about it. So anyway, it was Les Journées de Patrimoine, which means one day a year in France, every monument is open to the public. It's always at the end of September. I highly recommend that. If you want to see something that's always closed, that's the day it's going to be open. And this villa was always closed. It's only open one afternoon a week. So I said to my friend, well, let's go. Maybe I'll meet Madame Pasquini. So I had on a little sundress, a big hat. It was hot, late September. And we showed up, and there she was at the bottom of the stairs, just standing there. I'd seen her on the internet, so I knew what she looked like. And I walked straight up to her and I said, hi, I'm Gianne de Genevraye. I'm the person that's been calling you and emailing. And she looked at me like this. She looked at my friend and she said, when are you coming to set up? So that taught me a very, very valuable lesson. You have to show up, right? So this is the studio she gave me. I don't require a lot of, I require space, but my kit is pretty small. I have a table, an easel, canvases, and some paints in the other room. So this is what it looks like when I'm setting up, okay? I'm out here, there's my easel, my canvas. I'm gonna paint this right here, and this is the painting. So when I arrived, a couple of weeks I was into working and she was seeing what I was doing and admiring it. She said, could you paint the cat? Rio? Rio's been here 20 years and you know, Rio's gonna die pretty soon and I'd really like a memory of Rio. And I go, well, you know, I don't normally do that kind of thing, but the city of Antibes had given me a free pass to the Picasso Museum. So very often after my painting session, I would go for the last hour of the museum's opening. And I always discovered something new. It's such a beautiful museum. And what I discovered was Picasso had no fear whatsoever of what anyone was thinking about anything that he was doing. He was creating. It was pure creativity. He was moving from one thing to the next, and everything followed. And I could see that. I could see the progression of what he was doing. So once I came to that realization, I went back to Isabella. I said, I'll paint the cat. You know, because look, he painted cats playing flutes. He painted goats. He painted sea urchins. He painted pipes. And it didn't matter. Sailors, scruffy sailors, everything. I'll paint the cat. So that photo there, Rio posed for that photo, right? And so Isabella and I went around the villa and we found this vase. And I said, can you give me a pair of clippers? And I went out and I cut that amazing bouquet. And then I came back the next day and painted the bouquet in the vase, just like I was putting the flowers in the vase. I donated that painting to the Ellen Rock Villa. It's in the gift shops if you ever get a chance. So on the last days of my residency there, it had rained quite a bit, and I showed up one day and there was this really unexpected, beautiful field of cyclamen. You can see there's no green leaves in that whatsoever, only color. So this is the last painting I did. It's the most abstract. I leaned it up against this tree and painted it right there. And it's only about the color and the form and that scruffy hedge in the background. So it's a pretty abstract piece. She gave me an exhibition in the villa. All three of these paintings are here today. So that's what the invitation looked like. I think it was a 2 or 3 month exhibition. The villa was absolutely beautiful when it was open. So Okazaki, Japan. Now this was an amazing residency. The chateau there, the castle you're seeing is the first shogun's castle, and it is in Okazaki. So I took a plane from Paris, because I live in Paris I'd say 7 months out of the year. So that's about the same distance as from Paris to Okazaki as from LA to Okazaki. It's about 9.5 hours. So I arrived, I had my roller and a big portfolio, because I'm working pastels, because my time is very short, only 10 days. So I arrive in Tokyo, and I had to get down to Okazaki. It was 2.5 hours and 3 trains. And I didn't know how to do it. And, so I'm trying to find my way, and I'm on these speed trains, and there's thousands of people in these train stations, and nobody's speaking English. The further south you go, the least they speak English. So I would hold up a ticket, and I'd say, where? And they'd point me, or they'd take me to the train, and they were so gracious. And I arrived, and I kept saying, I've got to change money, but I'll do it when I get there. Well, I got there, and it was a tiny, tiny train station. There was no money changing. And a lovely woman saw that I was bewildered, and she said, "Can I help you?" in English. And I said, "Well, yes, I've got to get to my hotel, but I don't have any money." And she said, "Well, let's go to information." And anyway, there was no place to get any money. So she gave me my taxi fare. Yes, this is Japan. This is what Japan is. They don't know you, and they will do anything for you. It was just a wonderful, wonderful thing. So that night, I finally get to my hotel overlooking this castle, and the mayor knows that I'm there. So he says, "Well, we have a dinner arranged for you, traditional Japanese dinner." Now, I don't like Japanese food. So I'm going to this dinner. They don't speak English, or very little. So we're holding up a phone with a translation app. And this meal comes out. This is only half of the meal. This is what I had to eat. Every bit of it unidentifiable. I survived. I'm still here. So Hiroko and her wonderful husband Koshi, they picked me up the next morning, and they welcomed me into their very beautiful home. And here they are. She gave me her traditional tea room, set it all up with tarps and everything so that I could do my pastel work there. Hiroko totally took care of me. She cooked for me. She drove me to the parks that I had to see, where the amazing landscape. She drove me out into the countryside to see this wonderful English artist that does traditional Japanese woodblock. Fantastic. She took care of everything. So the only thing I had to do was work. So we would go in the morning to a park, and then we'd come home, and she said, "Now you will work." So I did. And I got a lot done. So these are the types of parks that she took me to, amazingly beautiful. Now, it's cold. The obvious choice for residency in Japan would have been, of course, the cherry blossoms. Well, that was too obvious for me, so I wanted to do the change of leaves. And being a native Californian, I had never seen leaves like that. Never in my life. So getting back to the push the limits of traditional landscape, this is a very typical image of what a traditional landscape painter would paint, right? Foreground, midground, and background and sky, water and sky. But I wanted to do something else. I wanted to do the leaves, and especially the contrast of the color. Now, using Sennelier pastels, dry pastels, the best pastels in the world, very, very powdery, pure pigment, is the only way you're ever going to get those pure pigment feel and exact color. Now these photographs are, the photograph here of the leaves, this is not an augmented photograph. This is really what it looks like. So, I mean, look at these colors. I had never seen anything like this in my life, being from here. East Coast people have seen this. So I was painting the vibration of life. Everything was moving and vibrating around me. It was just so amazing. And the water was shimmering, and Hiroko was there saying, "Take a look, take your time, just look at this." So as I say, my visual memory helped me quite a bit. I took some photos, I did, because it's impossible to do pastel work in situ because of wind and dust, and it's messy, so I have to work in a studio to do it. And there's Okazaki East Park with Hiroko. Beautiful. So painting the ephemeral and the eternal, this is what it's all about for me, because the garden is a metaphor for our life. It's about birth, growing, thriving, expanding, being beautiful, withering, and dying. So it's the perfect mirror for our lives. So in painting nature, I feel that I'm painting also the life experience, and the ephemeral, which is our experience, and the eternal, which is the plant experience. So the gardens as a metaphor for life, that's really, for me, the real basis of what I'm trying to do is painting the life experience. And when people ask me, they say, well, why don't you paint people? Well, I say, plants are much more interesting. So I'll close with this wonderful quote from Victor Hugo. A garden to walk in, immensity to dream in. What more could he ask? A few flowers at his feet, and above him the stars. Because not only is the garden mirrored with our lives, the garden is also mirrored in the cosmos, into the cosmic flower, right? So when we consider that our Milky Way has more than 1 billion planets in it. And imagine how many gardens there are on those planets. So I think I've got a lot to do in the next few years. Thank you very much. So this is my favorite part, questions. Anybody have any questions? Yes?
What are you using when you're painting, like the acrylic? Do you have a special painting blend that you create?
All of these paintings are oil. I don't use acrylic. And I do make my own medium. It's an organic medium, meaning that it's made from casein, which is milk solid powder, and egg yolk, and linseed oil, and turpentine. And I prepare all my own canvases with rabbit skin glue. That sounds gross, but it isn't. And with marble powder. I love that idea. Well, the question is, have I considered painting flowers at night, flowers that open at night? And it's a wonderful idea. I painted one thing that's similar to that in La Mortella on the island of Ischia, the Amazon lily that Marion owns, that painting. It's an amazing lily that opens at night as a female, white, and then dies for about 12 hours, and then reopens as a male in fuchsia. Amazing. There's one of those at Kew Gardens. They're very, very rare. They have to have their own greenhouse, glass house with very specific temperature because they're native only to the Amazon in Brazil.
Residency this past spring was the hardest. Why?
I knew someone was going to ask that. Because Bagatelle is first of all, it's enormous. So they gave me a studio right in the center of the garden, which was lovely. And because I work in situ, I have to carry all of my kit to the site. So it's very physical. That's number one. Number two, they had one of the worst springs in history. Hail, rain, wind, storms, cold. It was just dreadful. And number three, it's a garden that's open 365 days a year with thousands of people. So people would gather around and someone would say, "Where are the toilets?" I'm not kidding. So very quickly, I realized that at about 5 o'clock, the garden was open till 7. At about 5, most people left, so then I would go out. So I'd hide in my studio and go out, and that is where I had to learn to work from sketching, a lot of sketching, and with using my memory, I would go out and look, and then come back and paint, go out and look, come back and paint. And at 5, I would go out really and finish. Anybody else? Yes, Christina?
How is it different painting from in situ or painting from a photograph? How is that different relationship?
Yeah, we had a really, really interesting example of that yesterday at the Irvine Museum of a plein air painter. There was a very small, what's called a field study. A field study, it means done in the field. So that would be a plein air, it's about this big. And it just lays in the basic form and the basic color. And then the artist went back in the studio and did a very large painting, probably 4 by 3 feet. The iPhone is exactly the same thing. It just kick it up 100 years. It's the same thing. Because I'm only, I'm sorry, you cannot do a 4 by 4 painting with something this big. It's impossible. So what I'm doing is I'm referring only to the form and some of the color, but I remember the colors, and I add the colors that I want. So I'm only looking at the form when I'm looking at the iPhone. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Do you ever work from video footage so you can catch the changing light or different parts of the day versus just still photography?
That's a good question. No, I don't. But what I'm trying to capture is exactly that evolution. So that's the hard part, because when you're standing for 4 hours in front of something, I'm seeing all that change. I'm seeing all that movement and that light change. And so I'm painting every single part of it in the same place, and that's what gives it that vibration of life, right? And the negative space helps that a lot. Anytime you confine any kind of form with a line, you've killed it. So there are never lines in any of my painting. There's no pre-line drawing on any of the canvases. It's direct painting. And I'm always thinking about exactly that, capturing the light and the evolution as the light goes through the day. Good question. Thank you. Oh, one more. Arlene, please.
What is on your list this year in the future that we can look for? Purely selfish,
Yes.
thinking that in the future we hope to have you exhibit again.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'd be honored. Yes, I'm supposed to go to Greece to paint in Olympia, but I will probably do pastel work there, probably in June. And in April and May, I'm invited to just a wonderful residency in the city of Menton, which some of my friends here know very well. Menton is the city right on the French Riviera, right before you get to Italy. A beautiful city, my favorite city in France. And there's a villa up on the hill there in the Garavan, which was created in the 1920s by a man that was a Renaissance man. He was a poet, he was a historian, a writer. He did frescoes, beautiful frescoes. He did ceramics. He created the garden, and he was an architect. This was his villa. And I'm invited to stay there at the villa and paint the villa, April and May. So then, thank you very much for coming. I'm so pleased. I can, or...
All right, thank you all for coming, and I'm trying to think here.
Please be sure and go upstairs and see the pastels. And I'm around the paintings. I'll be socializing less, and we can talk about the paintings if you'd like to.
Thanks again for coming.